Hi everyone, I'm Kimberly Seals-Allers, and I'm so excited to invite you here for another session with Conversations with Kimberly. And today we're having an amazing conversation with a very effervescent Francie Webb, who is the author of Go Milk Yourself. And we're excited about bringing to you, this is really going to blow your mind, a whole new level of conversation about the way that we view ourselves, the way that we view our bodies, and what that means for us as women, and what that means for our babies as well.
Yep.
Yeah. So again, I'm Kimberly Seals-Allers, author of The Big Letdown, breastfeeding advocate, journalist, mom, my most important job. But today we're talking about, one, hand expression as self-expression, and kind of rethinking the way that we look at ourselves, right? So one of the first things I wanted to talk to you about, in The Big Letdown, I talk about really the structural barriers, the ways that, policies let women down, the way that our culture and our society has let women down. How do you see that connected to the work that you're doing now with Go Milk Yourself?
It's a great question. So hand expression has completely changed my life, which pretty much everybody who hears from me knows. I think that there are lots of barriers to us feeling successful within our bodies. And breastfeeding is one of the things that we can do from our bodies, right? It's one of the powers that we have. And when it goes well, it can be awesome. And when it sucks, it really sucks.
Really.
And it changes lives one way or the other. Like, people remember it as a failure or a trauma, and some people remember it as like something that, really changed their life for the better and their family's lives for the better. And so when I think about the barriers, I realize that some of them are right here inside us.
Yeah.
And so I was telling you a story about how I took my baby to the pediatrician, and they weighed her, and the doctor immediately told me I needed to supplement with formula because she was too small. Her weight had dropped. And I'm sitting there sobbing, formula because she was too small. And I happened to be going the very next hour to the lactation consultant support group, and my friend walked me there, and we weighed the baby, and she'd been weighed wrong. Somebody at the doctor's office had weighed her wrong. And so when we talk about the barriers, I think there are a lot of assumptions made about women, and not just women, because there are also men who feed their babies with their bodies. There are trans men. And so breastfeeding and chest feeding have so much power, and yet there's something within our culture, we've been taught. We've been taught, sometimes it's been modeled for us within our families, sometimes it's been modeled for us in our workplaces, that we are not enough.
That we are not enough.
And so I think that the structural barriers that are in place, like some of the things that you talked about, are the lack of sustainable part-time work, for example. We talk about how there isn't good enough family leave. We talk a lot about maternity leave, but let's talk about family leave. And that's something we bring up a lot, and that's something that's just normal in other countries, in other parts of the world. And so I think that when we have all of these pieces in place that are saying to us, we are not enough, then we just believe that thing we already believe.
Right, that's right. And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, particularly with lactation, which we know kind of having these feelings of scarcity, having this anxiety will literally limit your lactation. So it does become true.
And so then we pump, right? Thinking about this, let's link this to hand expression. We pump, and we're like, I only got. You hear this all the time. A mom messaged me yesterday and said she's not getting enough from the pump. I said, how much are you getting? 2 to 3 ounces after a feeding, 4 to 5 ounces without a feeding. I'm like, damn, girl, she's doing it. And she's like, oh, but so many people have so much more than I do. We always have this idea that we're not enough. And so when you hand express, you learn that you can get your milk out whenever you want.
That's right.
And that when you think there's nothing there, there actually is. We always call it bonus milk. I'm done pumping, I'm done nursing, there must be nothing left in there. But there's always more where that came from. And so when we adopt that mindset, it can change our lives and the lives of everybody we affect. And hand expression can help us do that, because this becomes your pump.
That's right.
And it's so powerful.
And I love the idea, kind of sparking this way of thinking with women that says you don't even need machines, right? We're often feeling that, again, we're not enough. We need something to complete the task.
Totally.
And what I was so empowered by about the concept of your book is really saying, you know what? You actually have everything you need, and that includes your hands. Ladies, hello. Okay, so this idea of empowerment and us feeling complete is really all about not always needing a machine to complete what we can do for ourselves. I just find that to be so amazing. Why do you think that is such a powerful message? You talk about hand expression change your life. Why is this so powerful for other women, even if you're not breastfeeding right now? The message, what's the universal that we all can connect with?
I think that's a great question. What it really comes down to is we have options. And people want options and people want freedom.
Yes.
And I mean, and just for a second, we got to put this on the table. Like, there are places where people do not have options. There is oppression. Mm-hmm. There are black and brown babies who are dying in our own country every day.
In our own city.
Right here in the city that we're sitting in right now.
That's right.
And there are people, there's so much oppression, so much hurt, so much discrimination. There's so much that's really just unfair. Mm-hmm. And so we can't pretend that everybody has freedom.
Right.
Like, I'm not here to say, like, and particularly as a white woman, I'm not here to be like, hey, everybody, you have options. Like, that's cute.
Right.
But that's not the truth. However, there are some times where we have options and we don't think that we do.
Absolutely.
And I think that the universal truth is that everybody, I think we can all agree that we want more freedom in our lives. Like, if we have the freedom to, basically decide our own fates, like, that's amazing. That changes everything and our faith in ourselves.
And also, it could be a great leveler. I mean, we just saw a new pump that's like, what, $1,000?
Yeah.
And so what we don't want is this disparity between who continues to breastfeed because they need a pump or they need to extract milk from their body to increase. But the idea that you can do with your hands is so powerful, because it could also decrease kind of like the socioeconomic gap between who actually can afford a pump, women who may have forgotten the insurance needed 18 weeks to get it, and now you're in between. So many women have stopped breastfeeding in that gap. And so this is just an amazing way of saying you actually have everything you need, whether that is an interim, whether that is ongoing. And I'm just getting
pump
goosebumps.
if you want to.
Wait a minute.
Right? Like, you can put a pumping bra on and double pump and type those emails or look at pictures of your baby, or, like, I always say this is the ideal pumping scenario. I am on a pump and someone is feeding me grapes and somebody else is massaging my feet.
Is someone fanning you with, like, big leaves?
Oh, I like that you added that. I'm cool with that. And I'm reading like People magazine or something that's just, like, mindless. Like, wouldn't that be nice?
That would be nice.
Like, oh, I need to get milk out, but it's no big. I'm just going to relax and do it.
Yes.
For most people, that's not what the experience of pumping is like. And you talk about how pumping also becomes this very hidden thing, right? That we have to, like, go away.
And a degrading experience. The sound.
It absolutely can be.
You're hooked up to the flanges. You're looking like Madonna in a bad video. I mean, that's not really empowering,
Well, it's interesting because I personally hated pumping. Me too. And now I hand express instead of pumping when I need to, and that's really changed my life. And I have so many people who come to me and feel really great about their relationship with the pump. Yeah. And so I say to them, awesome. Yes. Now learn to hand express well. And then you'll have options. So you go to your friend's wedding, or you go, go on a date night with your partner, or whatever it is you may do. I had one person tell me, well, I can't go, my husband and I can't go out to dinner because if we did, we'd have to be home by 9 p.m. because I have to get on the pump. Right. And she said, my husband feels like, I'm cheating on him with the pump. Right. That's really what she said. Like, people feel kind of chained to it, That's right. And so I say, like, in as much as the pump makes your life easier, use it. Mm-hmm. In as much as this will make your life easier, use it. If you and baby are able to get the support that you need and establish a relationship where baby can latch well, and you can also nurse, do that. Like, do the things that work best for you, and it's your body and your family. You get to decide.
And what I love about that, at the end of my book, I talk about women reimagining something that what we need, we can't even fathom with our brains because we've been caught in this two-thing conversation. Breast or formula, pump or nothing. And that we really have to start reimagining something new, like the spaghetti sauces that I talk about.
Yes, I love the spaghetti sauces.
And I see this as a real important part of reimagining all the options.
Can you tell them a little bit about the spaghetti sauce thing? Because it's pretty cool.
It's pretty cool. So at the end of the book, I talk about kind of this guy who was a marketing scientist and rediscovered kind of all the brands of spaghetti sauce, and the idea being that people would only pick from what they were given, right?
It's so, like ragu or prego.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. It's like marinara or garden. But nobody knew that they actually wanted the super chunky or the 3-cheese Romano until someone gave it to us. Right. And so the science proved that given the only two options, you will pick from those options. But when you have a buffet of sauces, and then you will actually, no, I actually like this, and I actually would prefer that. And so kind of creating this variety, because we know what the spaghetti sauce aisle looks like at the grocery store.
Yes, there are a lot of them.
That kind of variety, and where we have with breastfeeding, birthing, pumping, all these things, then then women will really have true choice, you know, and not kind of like this fake thing.
We can't call it choice when we're put in boxes.
When we're put in boxes, if we're put in boxes. Speaking of boxes, I wanted to talk to you about, really we've been seeing a lot of scaremongering going on, particularly from the Fed is Best Foundation, and really trying to make women fear themselves and their ability to feed their baby. I mean, and it's an important issue that needs to be addressed, but I wanted to ask you about, how do you see your work connecting to some of this kind of this buzz that's out there right now?
Yeah. I want to say first, and a lot of people out there already know this, but I want to say first that I am a survivor of infant loss. Not as a mother, but as a babysitter. I was a teenage babysitter, and I put a little girl to sleep, and she died of SIDS after I put her to sleep.
Oh my goodness.
And it was, I mean, there aren't words, right? Like, it's horrific. It is never not horrible to lose a child in general. But when babies die, it's horrible for everybody. And I see some of the stories that have been out there. I think there was one recently about if I'd given my baby just one bottle.
Right, that's a
then
common headline.
I wouldn't have lost my baby. And the first thing I connect to is the baby loss. Like, nothing will ever make that better.
Right.
And kind of picking apart things that could be done differently is a really complicated thing, because what really matters is, like, there's grief and then there's healing from it. And yet, there's a common thread in a lot of these stories, and the common thread is lack of support.
Right.
And lack of knowledge.
Lack of knowledge.
I mean, the pediatrician who weighed my baby wrong, actually it was, one of the medical assistants who weighed the baby wrong, but she didn't follow up on that. She straight up went to, like, you have low supply. And I said, well, can I pump a bottle for my baby? And she said, that was another thing that annoyed me. She said, if you're open to giving baby a bottle. And I said, okay, I'll give her a bottle. She's 2 months old. That's fine. And she said, no, I don't mean breast milk. I don't think you have enough milk for that. She said, and I said, well, could I pump the milk in the morning so that later I could give my baby that bottle, maybe before bed, if she really wanted me to give her extra milk? No, then I don't think you'd have enough milk. So right there, and this is an incredibly popular pediatrician on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. Like, when I posted, who should be my pediatrician, this mom's list of, like, tens of thousands of people mentioned this person's name.
Right.
I never went back to her after that, by the way. But I mean, right there we have somebody who's saying, I know something, when they don't really know it.
Right. And they aren't willing to say, I don't know it.
Exactly. And that's something that you mentioned as well. And I've seen that in some articles about breastfeeding recently, that there are a lot of people within the medical field who don't have training in breastfeeding. I had surgery a few years ago, and the doctor said to me, you'll need to pump and dump.
Right.
And I said, I don't know what. I think because this doctor knew my family. I said, do you really know that? Or are you just making it up? I didn't say it exactly like that, but he was like, I really don't know that. I'm just erring on the safe side because the research isn't there to tell it to us.
Right.
And I said, well, I'm going to text the lactation consultant. He said, that's a good idea. He said, she knows better than I do.
She knows better.
And so he said that to me.
Yeah.
Would he say that to someone who he didn't know personally? I don't
Probably
know.
Not.
But so, the point here is, like, we have a serious lack of support. And it's like you were saying earlier, can we really pretend that there is true choice in how to feed your baby when I would say the majority of people who I've encountered who have reached out to me, or I have just kind of done some informal polls and what have you on various Facebook groups, they've said they stopped breastfeeding because something happened.
Right.
It wasn't, I wanted to stop breastfeeding at this time and then we stopped. It was something went down. And some of those things, with more support, those people wouldn't have been able to... Essentially, the message that I'm getting is, I didn't feed my baby with my body as long as I wanted to.
Yep.
And what I care about for mothers and fathers and parents and however people identify, if you are caring for your children or anyone's children, really, I want you to have some choice and some power.
Absolutely.
And so the mom who's...
especially in those early days, that kind of shapes the experience.
Right. And so the mom who's going back to work and saying, well, I'm going to breastfeed my baby, but they only give me 2 15-minute breaks in my 9-hour shift.
Right.
And I don't have a private space to pump.
Right.
And I don't get paid for that time. But go ahead and tell me that she has choice. Like, that's not true.
That's not a choice.
And so
that's
when
just a
I
lousy
see
option.
Right, and so when I kind of back to your point, like when we see all of this fear mongering out there about, like, but breastfeeding is dangerous. Like, breastfeeding is not inherently dangerous.
No, it's kept
becoming a parent
alive.
Is inherently risky
Right.
for so many reasons. We risk our hearts, we risk our bodies, we risk our entire lives. But what's out there is, a common thread of not enough support and not enough knowledge.
And we see that, and that's why we're talking about focusing on the structural barriers and not trying to pin this on mothers who really deserve much better.
Yep.
And also, like, just from a real technical perspective, if a mother has some delay in her milk coming in, can hand expression help?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there can be delayed onset of prolactin, which is what basically builds the milk.
Right.
And so if that happens, one of the things that sometimes women will be advised to start harvesting colostrum before the baby comes, because they already know there's a condition that will cause delayed onset of milk. And so right there and then, like, that recommendation is telling us that, like, it is quite possible that getting milk out will help your milk come in. Now, not all of this stuff is completely researched yet. And like, we all know that, like, there's a whole lot going on with breastfeeding research, right?
Yep.
And I also want to add that, one thing we all know about breast milk is that getting it out is what makes it come in.
Yeah.
And so that's what is unique about hand expression. And so people will come to us and say, we have lots of people who come to the Milkin Mama to take our workshops and to do private sessions and just to ask questions. And they'll say, I've tried, this supplement, and I've tried this lifestyle change, and I've done all the things that so-and-so said I should do. And what it really comes down to is, like, I can tell you that hand expression can help you, because if you can get milk out wherever you are, whenever you want, and you can kind of control it, you're able to actually better replicate what the baby can do, because you're pulling, which is negative pressure, and that's what the pump does. But you're also pressing into your breast, which is positive pressure, which is what a baby's mouth and tongue do together. And so, like, that motor skill that babies can do, we can better replicate it with our hands.
Wow.
And so if we do those things, there's a very good chance that we will be able to get milk out earlier and often if we need to. In most cases, like, if it, in the ideal scenario, a baby's able to latch in a way that feels good to mom and baby, that gets the milk out effectively. If there's effective removal of milk, there will be effective kind of renewal of the milk, right? It'll keep coming in. But there are lots of things that delay that process, that interrupt that process. And so if you have another option for removing milk, like your hands, more power to you.
More power to you. And the power is literally in your hands. I wish I had known this. I'm so excited, because I do feel that, we really have to start talking more broadly. And as women, we have to share our knowledge. Many of us are not connected to our usual circles of social support. Motherhood is becoming so isolating, and we're losing this kind of shared knowledge, this way of doing and being that used to be kind of what our grandmothers would have taught us. You're like my grandmother right now. I just wish I had you around when I was a baby. When I had my baby.
My grandmother probably wishes she had me around too. My mom told me that all of my aunts and uncles, my mom is one of 7, and she told me that, my grandmother had her babies at the time where they knocked you out completely.
Yes.
So she didn't even know that she had a baby.
I have forceps dips in my head, so I will never.
Oh, but your head looks beautiful.
Well, I wear a ponytail.
Good healing there.
To direct attention away from the fact that I was pulled out with forceps. Yeah.
Right. And so all of these practices that we've had over time affected what's modeled for us.
Yes.
Yes. And so when I think about that, it's like, sometimes the information is out there and it just helps us to connect with each other. And I always tell people too, you want to learn hand expression, you can go to YouTube. You absolutely can. And what I've found is that most of what you'll find on YouTube, one, you don't have human support after that.
Right.
And that's why what we do is different. And that's what I hope Go Milk Yourself will help even more people to understand, that, like, you are really not alone, because you could feel so alone.
Right.
And then the other piece is, you'll usually see hand expression used as, like, a therapeutic measure. It's like, we have to get milk out right now for this very temporary, urgent situation.
Right.
And somebody messaged me recently, and she's been struggling with breastfeeding for a long time, and she finally said, she's like, I've always heard of hand expression, which, by the way, I never had. I went to the lactation consultant. I'm like, you won't believe it, I can get it out with my hands. And she's like, I do believe it, it's called hand expression. I'm like, it has a name. But this woman said, I just didn't know you could use it to replace pumping if you want it. I'm like, that is the big shift.
Right.
That, like, you get to choose.
I think people think of it as like you're engorged, you don't have a pump. Yes. It's kind of a temporary measure.
Let me get out of pain in this moment. Let me get a tiny bit to baby.
Exactly. But not to think of it as something you could own, that you could do, that could actually sustain you, which I think is, again, back to our hand empowerment.
I know.
So next week, you and I are going to be at Wild Was Mama in Brooklyn. I'm very, very excited for a special event and a fundraiser that we're doing with Choices in Childbirth. Yes. And we're going to be talking about birth, breast, and beyond. And it's really important to me, and part of what I did with the Big Letdown was really about extending this conversation. Like, it's not just about, kind of this issue. It's about it's about beyond this issue. Right. So I wanted to ask you, as we're thinking about the event coming up next week and super excited, I hope people will come out. I mean, what does the beyond include for you?
Oh, there's so much beyond, right? You know, one of the things that I've struggled the most with in my life that's been such a shift for me lately, thank you God, is this concept of being enough. Like when I was scrolling Facebook one day, you know, Facebook and Google, they're kind of like Big Brother. They know the things you look at. So they got these ads, and you're like, damn, I was just looking at that on Amazon. How'd they know?
How did they know?
And so one day there's this ad that comes up, and it's a photo, and it says, it's just a t-shirt. And it says 3 lines, the same line over and over. I'm getting goosebumps as I say it. You are enough. You are enough. You are enough. And I was like, and sometimes you get things right when you need them.
Yes.
And it was like, I never knew that.
Right.
That's what it felt like.
That's so true.
And so what do I want in the beyond? I mean, first of all, a lot of people have experiences of feeding their babies they're not happy with.
And they're still talking about it years
later.
I met a 60-year-old woman who just needed to tell me her story.
Yep. You'll see people in the park and they'll be like, I tried to feed my baby, my milk dried up. I tried to feed my baby, they got teeth, it hurt. You know, there are all these stories. Or someone told them they couldn't, right? And there's so many complicating factors there. But one thing, what I wish more than anything is for everybody to feel some type of healing in the beyond. That whatever experience you had is something that you can really sit with and dig into and understand really helps you become the person you are. And that seems so cliche.
Right.
The absolute hardest and the most difficult and most hurtful things in our lives are sometimes where we do our most growth. Like Brene Brown calls them the messy middle.
Yes.
Like where is that zone where things are so uncomfortable that I have to like really find out who I am. And so more than anything, I wish healing. And along with that is this concept of like, that we are enough.
That we are enough.
Every single one of us.
I think a lot of women need healing, and because we end up kind of battling it out because we haven't healed from whatever false choice that we didn't have or we forced into, and so we definitely need to focus on that healing. I think the beyond for me in connection with healing is also about kind of not forgetting the mothers who come behind us. I think we kind of get through motherhood, we've had our experience, and then we kind of move on because we're on to something else. Like right now I have 2 teenagers, so oh my God, you know.
Wow.
So
I can't imagine.
But what I want our beyond to include is to think about the mothers who come behind us, and that, you know, we each would want to, not to say, well, I survived that, you'll figure it out as we hear, but for us to say, this was my experience, I actually want something better for the mothers who come behind me, you know?
And their families and their babies, their partners.
Their babies, and everyone who was involved in that process. So the fact that, you know, I want our beyond to be about looking back to other mothers, and that we all kind of think about the things that we can do structurally, the things that we can do on a policy level, the things that we can do in our conversation and our healing of each other, that we make things better for the mothers who come behind us. I think that's really important.
I mean, we talk about normalized breastfeeding, right? Like it's a hashtag that has hundreds of thousands of, I don't even know what they're called, tags, mentions, I don't know.
Whatever.
You and I are somehow old. That's funny how that happens quickly. But, you know, you think about that idea of normalized breastfeeding, like what if we normalize healing? What if we normalize humanness?
That's right.
You
That's
know?
right. That's right.
And I think one of the things that I hope we will all begin to understand even more over time, and this is the name of my business. It's not like I'm the Milkin Mama, I'm going to go milk myself. Like I'm milking. The milk in Mama has power. Like there's power in human milk. And
I love that.
The you know, they're biological and immunological like factors that we could consider in that power. But let's also just consider that like when we can do something to help others with our own bodies, with our own selves, everybody around us benefits, and so do we.
And so do we.
So everybody actually wins.
Right. The power is within us. Hello.
I know. Imagine that.
Imagine that. So in time now, I think I'm gonna go see Wonder Woman now. I'm feeling that. I'm really feeling that, and I've already got my my usual bangle.
I see that.
So this has been such a great conversation. So fun.
And we'll be back together on Wednesday.
We'll be back together
Mama in Brooklyn.
Do we have
the address? Do you want me to quickly look that up?
Yeah, let's get the address. And
why don't you tell them the times, a little more details?
It's going to be 6:30 to 8:30. You can check out a link which I will post below this video for you to get your tickets.
And what are we going to do at the event?
We are going to be, what are we going to do in the event? We're going to be having dynamic conversation, kind of like this. I'll be sharing some more about the Big Letdown. It is a fundraiser for Choices in Childbirth, a organization that Francie and I are both very passionate about. And so $40 gets you a personally signed copy of my book. And then you can come down. If you already have a book, come on through anyway.
I'll be bringing my book. I just showed you has like 80. I dog-eared almost every page. Did you see that?
Well, we really want you to come and join the conversation, and let's talk about the healing. Let's talk about the beyond, and start kind of, reframing that conversation for what we really want for other mothers. So thank you so much for
I also wanted to mention
the address
one more thing.
is 272 Driggs.
Good.
In Brooklyn.
Thank you, Dallas.
Thank you. This is so.
We should have just asked Dallas. We should have been like, "Hey, what's the address?"
And so, thank you again for joining me for Conversations with Kimberly.
Excited.
Kimberly, I'm so excited that you are going on this mission. We look forward to seeing your book this summer.
You.
And
do you know one of the things that they say increases the chance that someone will breastfeed for the long term?
What's that?
Community. So when we get together tomorrow, can we do it tomorrow too? And the next day. So when we get together on Wednesday, we'll have snacks, we'll have wine, it'll be nice and relaxed and so much fun. And I've been to one of your events before and seen you read, and I sit there and kind of cry in front of everybody, which is totally normal. But when we're together doing that, we're going to have so much power.
Yeah.
Because the power of that conversation, I mean, I can't even tell you how much your work has already changed my life.
Thank
I
you.
just found out about you maybe like 2 months ago. And my husband's like, oh my God, you get to meet her in person, because he knows I'm kind of a fangirl. But I think that, the power that we'll have together is something that really everyone there can take out into the world.
Yeah.
And, being able to support choices in childbirth is massive, because the advocacy work that's being done for women and babies through them is unbelievable.
Okay, I love it. I love it.
I have to tell you, though, before we sign off, we have to say one thing together.
What's that?
Do you know what it is?
No.
It's go milk yourself.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Ready.
1, 2, 3. Go milk yourself.